I will not waste your time with small talk. If you are listening to me right now, it is because somewhere inside you there is a quiet fear, a fear not of dying, but of growing old the wrong way. I understand that fear. I have buried friends who were younger than me. I have watched strong men shrink into fragile shadows. I have seen brilliant minds dissolve into confusion. Aging, my dear, is not the real enemy. Decline is. I turned 100 this past spring. I walked into my own birthday party without a cane. I read every card without glasses. I remembered every name in the room. That is not a miracle. That is a consequence. A long, slow consequence built from thousands of ordinary choices most people dismiss as unimportant. The world wants you to believe longevity is luck or genetics. That is comforting, because if it is luck, then you are not responsible. But the truth is less convenient and far more empowering. How you live today is already writing the condition of your body 30 years from now. When people ask me the secret to living well beyond 100, they expect something exotic, a rare herb from a distant mountain or a hidden medical breakthrough. They are disappointed when I tell them the foundation is painfully simple. Longevity is not built in heroic bursts. It is built in quiet daily discipline. It is the way you eat when no one is watching. It is the way you move when you feel tired. It is the way you think when life disappoints you. Over time, these invisible decisions form a pattern. That pattern becomes your biology. I have outlived 3 generations of doctors, yet the principles that kept me strong never changed. Your body is not confused about what it needs. It was designed for rhythm. Rhythm in sleep, rhythm in nourishment, rhythm in effort and rest. Most people live in constant disruption. They eat at war with their hunger, work at war with their energy, and think at war with their own peace. Then they wonder why their later years feel like a battlefield. I chose a different path. I chose alignment over convenience. Living well past 100 does not mean chasing youth. That is a childish mistake. It means cultivating resilience. Youth is speed. Longevity is stability. I learned to protect my strength the way a wise investor protects capital. I did not spend it recklessly on stress, resentment, or endless busyness. I invested it in habits that quietly compounded, walking instead of sitting, breathing instead of rushing, forgiving instead of hardening. These things sound soft, but they are structural. They determine whether your future will be supported or slowly collapsing. If you listen carefully to an old woman who has already walked the road you fear, you may realize something important. The door to a healthy old age does not open at 90. It opens in your 30s, your 40s, even today. Longevity is not an event waiting in the distance. It is a direction you choose every morning. Let me speak plainly now, because time has taught me that gentle hints are often wasted on the young. If you truly wish to live well beyond 100, you must first understand that your body is not a machine to be pushed until it breaks. It is a living system that responds, adapts, and remembers. Every habit you repeat becomes a message. Over decades, those messages shape your strength or your suffering. The first principle I lived by was nourishment that respects biology, not appetite alone. I did not eat for comfort, I ate for continuity. There is a difference. Food, when chosen wisely, becomes instruction for the cells, telling them how to repair, how to defend, how to remain supple instead of rigid. I kept my meals simple long before simplicity became fashionable. Fresh vegetables, grains that still remembered the soil they came from, fruits that followed the seasons instead of supermarket marketing. I rarely overfilled my stomach. Satiety is not the same as excess. I learned to leave the table with a sense of lightness, because digestion should sustain life, not drain it. Hydration was another quiet discipline. Many people think thirst is merely a sensation. I came to understand it as an early warning system. Water carries the chemistry of vitality through the body. Without it, everything thickens: the blood, the joints, even the clarity of thought. I did not wait until I felt parched. I drank consistently, respecting the silent work my organs performed day and night. It is astonishing how many ailments begin not with disease, but with neglect. Movement was never punishment in my life. It was conversation. I walked every day, even when the weather argued with me. I stretched before I knew the word for flexibility training. I lifted simple objects with intention, not vanity. The body thrives on motion the way a river thrives on flow. When you stop moving, stagnation begins its quiet conquest. I have seen people aged 20 years in 5 simply because they surrendered to the chair. They believed rest meant stillness. True rest, I discovered, is balance, effort followed by recovery, action followed by renewal. Sleep, too, became sacred territory. In a noisy world, protecting sleep is an act of self-respect. I kept regular hours not because I lacked excitement, but because I valued repair more than stimulation. During sleep, the mind sorts memories, the tissues rebuild, and the nervous system releases the strain accumulated during the day. Those who treat sleep as optional are negotiating with decline without realizing it. Yet physical habits alone are not enough. I witnessed many strong bodies collapse under the weight of an undisciplined mind. Emotional hygiene is as vital as nutrition. I practiced letting go long before psychologists turned it into a doctrine. Resentment is heavy. Chronic worry is corrosive. These states age the face, the posture, and eventually the organs themselves. I chose forgiveness not out of moral superiority, but out of practical survival. Peace conserves energy. Conflict consumes it. Purpose also played its role. I never allowed myself to believe that usefulness has an expiration date. Even now, at 100, I wake with small intentions: to write a letter, to tend a plant, to teach a grandchild how to bake bread. Purpose keeps the mind engaged with the future. Without it, people begin rehearsing their own disappearance. That rehearsal becomes reality sooner than they expect. Consistency, above all, was the architecture of my longevity. Not perfection, not obsession, consistency. I failed many times. I indulged. I grew tired. I doubted. but I returned to the principles again and again until they became less like rules and more like instinct. When habits become instinctive, discipline transforms into freedom. You no longer struggle to choose what supports you. You simply live it. Over the decades, I observed a clear cause and effect. Those who chased intensity often burned brightly and briefly. Those who cultivated steadiness endured. Longevity is not built on dramatic transformations. It is built on patient alignment with the natural design of the human body and spirit. This is not glamorous wisdom. It is durable wisdom. And durability, my dear, is what carries a woman beyond a century with her dignity intact. There is another dimension to longevity that few people discuss openly, perhaps because it cannot be measured as easily as blood pressure or bone density. It is the architecture of the inner life, the way you interpret events, the stories you tell yourself about hardship, the quiet beliefs that shape how your nervous system responds to the world. I did not always understand this. When I was young, I thought strength meant endurance at any cost. I worked too hard, worried too much, and believed sacrifice alone would guarantee a meaningful old age. Time, however, is a patient teacher. It revealed that survival is not the same as vitality. I began to notice a pattern among those who aged gracefully. They were not necessarily wealthier, nor did they possess extraordinary genetics. What they shared was adaptability. They treated change not as an enemy, but as a signal to adjust their rhythm. When the body whispered fatigue, they listened. When circumstances demanded reinvention, they responded with curiosity instead of resistance. Rigidity, I learned, is one of the fastest routes to decline. A tree that cannot bend will eventually break under a heavy wind. The same is true for the human spirit. Mental clarity became a daily practice for me rather than a fortunate accident. I kept my mind active long after formal education ended. I read aloud to strengthen memory, wrote in journals to refine thought, and engaged in conversations that challenged my assumptions. The brain, like muscle, responds to use. Neglect it, and it retreats. Stimulate it wisely, and it continues to form new pathways even in advanced age. People often assume cognitive deterioration is inevitable. I have witnessed otherwise. The mind thrives on novelty balanced with routine, learning new skills while honoring familiar anchors that provide emotional stability. Stress management, though we did not use that phrase in my youth, became another essential principle. I discovered that the body cannot distinguish between a genuine threat and a prolonged state of anxious anticipation. Both trigger the same cascade of tension, inflammation, and hormonal imbalance. Over years, this invisible storm erodes resilience. I cultivated practices that returned me to equilibrium. Deep breathing at dawn, moments of stillness before sleep, and long walks where I allowed my thoughts to settle like dust after a journey. These simple rituals were not indulgences. They were maintenance for the nervous system that carried me through a century of change. Relationships, too, shaped my longevity more than any single diet or exercise routine. Isolation is a silent accelerant of aging. I maintained friendships across generations, not merely for companionship, but for perspective. Younger people offered me momentum. Older friends, when I still had them, offered me wisdom. Shared laughter softened the rigidity of difficult years. Shared grief reminded me that pain, when expressed, becomes lighter to carry. I made a deliberate effort to remain socially engaged, even when loss tempted me to withdraw. Connection keeps the heart, both emotional and physical, in motion. Another truth I came to accept was the importance of moderation in ambition. Our culture often glorifies relentless striving, as though exhaustion were a badge of honor. I learned to redefine success. Instead of measuring my worth by productivity alone, I measured it by sustainability. Could I maintain this pace for decades without sacrificing health or peace? If the answer was no, I adjusted. Longevity requires long-term thinking. Every decision must be evaluated not only for its immediate reward, but for its cumulative impact. I also became attentive to the environment I allowed around me. Light, air, sound, and even the pace of conversation influence biological rhythms. I spent time outdoors whenever possible, letting sunlight guide my sleep cycles and fresh air invigorate my circulation. I reduced unnecessary noise, both literal and emotional. A calm environment does not eliminate life's challenges, but it equips the body to respond more intelligently. Overstimulated systems age faster. Balanced systems endure. Perhaps most importantly, I nurtured a sense of gratitude that matured alongside my years. Gratitude is not naive optimism. It is a stabilizing force. When you recognize the value of what remains rather than obsess over what is lost, you conserve emotional energy. This conservation has physiological consequences: lower stress hormones, steadier heart rhythms, deeper sleep. Gratitude, in this way, becomes a biological ally. As the decades accumulated, the cause and effect relationship became undeniable. Choices that once seemed small revealed themselves as structural supports. The woman I am today, upright, clear-minded, independent, is not separate from the young woman who decided to walk an extra mile, to forgive an old wound, to rest when pride urged her to continue. Longevity is continuity. It is the uninterrupted conversation between past decisions and present vitality. And that conversation, my dear, is still available to you if you begin listening now. Now that I stand at the threshold of a century behind me, and, if grace allows, a few more seasons ahead, I can tell you with certainty that longevity is neither an accident nor a privilege reserved for a chosen few. It is a pattern of respect toward the body, clarity within the mind, steadiness in the emotions, and intention in the way one chooses to live each ordinary day. When people look at me, they see the outcome. What they rarely see are the decades of quiet alignment that shaped that outcome. To live well beyond 100 is not about defying time. It is about cooperating with it. Time rewards consistency. It magnifies both care and neglect. Many imagine that aging arrives suddenly, like an unexpected storm. In truth, it gathers gradually, like weather forming on a distant horizon. The choices you make now are the climate of your future. If you nourish yourself with wisdom, move with purpose, and protect your inner balance, the later years can unfold not as a period of decline, but as a season of refinement. I have learned that independence in old age is built long before old age arrives. Strength is accumulated in advance. Mental clarity is rehearsed through lifelong curiosity. Emotional resilience is cultivated through forgiveness and perspective. These are not dramatic acts. They are quiet disciplines repeated until they become the architecture of your being. When that architecture is sound, the passing of years does not terrify you. It deepens you. There is also a certain freedom that comes with longevity when it is accompanied by health. You begin to see life less as a race and more as a continuum. You understand that urgency has its place, but endurance has greater power. I no longer chase the illusions that once demanded my attention. Instead, I invest my energy in what sustains meaning, connection, learning, and the gentle stewardship of the body that has carried me faithfully for 100 years. If you remember nothing else from the words of an old woman who has already walked the road ahead of you, remember this. Your future condition is being shaped in ways that are largely within your influence. Genetics may load the instrument, but lifestyle plays the melody. You are not powerless in the face of aging. You are a participant in its unfolding. Every nourishing meal, every mindful breath, every step taken instead of postponed, every burden released instead of clutched. These become votes cast for the life you will inhabit decades from now. Living well beyond 100 is not merely about extending existence. It is about preserving dignity, clarity, and the capacity to contribute. It is about reaching advanced age not as a passive observer of life, but as an engaged witness who still finds purpose in the morning light. That possibility is real. I am living proof of it. And if my story offers you anything, let it be this quiet assurance. Longevity, when guided by principle, can become not a burden of years, but a triumph of wisdom.